Welcome to Denver Community Media's Online Academy. I'm Austin, and today we're going to take a quick look at the scopes in DaVinci Resolve. In DaVinci Resolve, the scopes live in the bottom right corner, and you can cycle through the different common scopes by using the drop-down. And then you can get to settings for each scope, affecting how they look and display information using the little hamburger menu. We're going to start with the waveform. This is a great scope for looking at brightness and exposure across your image. 0 at the bottom is your black point, and 100 is your white point. Anything outside of these points is going to be getting clipped. You're going to be losing detail in the shadows and highlights. So just a good reference to keep everything in line here. And then left to right actually correlates with left to right in your image. So this dip here is probably this little shadowed valley here. And then, of course, you have the skyline right here, and you get a little gap in it where that rock obstructs that flow. So waveform is just a great tool for judging that brightness and exposure. Next, we'll look at the RGB parade. This gives you the same thing as a waveform, except instead of brightness, it's giving you your red, green, and blue channels. Really good for balancing, getting your white balance, making sure if there's something black in your image, it's purely black, something white is purely white, and just a good view of your overall balance. You have to use all of these taking into account your context. So these should be relatively balanced in a normal image. But if you're by the ocean or a very sky-heavy image, you would expect the blue to be bigger, green bigger if you're in a big, field, lots of grass, lots of greenery. This would be a little bigger. And if you try to balance it, it won't look right. It'll get kind of out of whack. But in general, a good balance here is what you're looking for. And just making sure that the tops, if the brightest thing in your image is white, match. The bottoms, if the darkest thing is black, that those match. And of course, getting a fairly good balance in the middle. Again, taking into account your context. Next, we'll look at the Vectorscope. This shows hue and saturation, really good for analyzing your color. And what I like on this one is this little white line here. Usually this isn't on by default, so you'll have to come down here and turn it on. This is your skin tone indicator. So we'll just make sure that's checked and go back out. So most human skin tone, regardless of how light or dark, should fall somewhere around this line. Maybe not exactly on it, but relatively in this range. So this is really good for making sure you have accurate skin tones. That's something people will notice. If the wall behind the sky, the background is a little off-colored, may not notice it as well, but if the skin tone is too far off unintentionally, then that will certainly be something people notice. And the nice thing about the Vectorscope is it does map out your primaries and secondaries. You have red, green, and blue, and then their complementary colors, yellow, magenta, and cyan. And these actually correlate with what's on your color wheels. So if you're a little off here, you might need to drag in that opposite direction, and just helps you identify those colors, especially for someone like me who's colorblind. It's a very useful tool to get everything kind of honed in and accurate. And then, so you have your hues here in each direction, and the further out, the more saturated your image is. So you can see, we can grow that out a little more. This doesn't quite have the same thing as the RGB parade or the waveform, where if you're outside of the zone, you're clipping. You can be halfway out and you can see we're kind of starting to lose some detail in some of the colors. If you're all the way out, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are clipping, but in general, getting past kind of where they tend to put the actual little color targets, I find tends to be a little too far. Even this is obviously a little too saturated. We'll pull that back. But just a great tool to visualize your colors and especially make sure that skin tone is accurate. The last scope on here is your histogram, and this is just a visualization, just a graph of the density of pixels at a certain brightness and brightness on those color channels. So basically we have a whole lot at this 20% range, kind of balances out a little bit more through here. And then of course we have a big spike at the top, probably this being too bright. So this is just a good tool to see your overall, what's your distribution of pixels, but doesn't actually tell you, is everything too bright, everything too dark. Maybe if everything were up here, it's too bright. But of course, distribution is going to be different depending on your image. So this just visualizes the density. How many of that pixel do you have that sit in that brightness or on that range in the color darkness. So that's your histogram. And we're just going to go back to the waveform. The reason these scopes are so important is because unless you are in a color facility with color calibrated screens and monitors all around you, you may not be seeing the colors accurately on your screen, especially on a Mac and some of the really high def and deeper HDR monitors that we have today. They can show more than what's typically going to be broadcast or on your screen. What a lot of the codecs, especially on like YouTube and Facebook, are going to show. So that you may be able to see details on your screen up in this region above 100 up here, but they're not going to actually be exported or viewable on other people's screens. So you want to make sure that you're keeping everything within that range. And this is just kind of that safety to make sure that it's not clipping once you put it out into the world to see. I hope you found this useful. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please give us a like, subscribe, and follow.